Being midway between extremes, not out of the ordinary. That is the definition of average, and that's where many would peg the Bucks. Are they actually there? Camille and I go through their offseason coming up after this on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. You can hear me on the Bucks Radio Network. You can find Camille on the Locked On NBA show and the Technical Foul podcast. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day. And Camille, we talked a little bit yesterday on the show about the makeup of this group and what to expect in terms of scoring, looking at the top 100 as we still wait on those updates to come out, who we think is going to be ranked second on this team, and what to expect from this group. Well, we've now started to see more people put together their grades for the offseason. You saw the immediate reactions to free agency in the offseason, and now we've taken a pause and have started to react to the whole picture in the offseason. So with that is some good and bad. I'm looking at two different outlets here, and these are within the last couple of days. Let's start with the good. The Athletic put together their updated look at power rankings. Now, I hesitate to even bring this up. I am not a big fan of power rankings in general, but nonetheless, it is July 29th, and we've yet to get Eurobasket, and we're in the thick of let's just get the season here. But they broke it out into tiers. And there are 5 tiers that they put together. The number 1 tier of contenders. Number 2 tier is teams that are in a good place. 3rd tier is the bubble. And this is the middle of the pack. 3rd tier is not the tier to fear. And the last one is the basement. So, I mean, I think our open probably gave it away. But where would you guess they have the Bucks slotted in among those tiers?
So my initial thought going through was like, I would think they're either on the very high end in a good place, which feels like it would be a lot to ask for from a national outlet. So like the bubble feels like the place to kind of slot the Bucks in with some other teams that might have some questions around. Could they be a contender in these? Could they not? I can see both pathways there. So like we're going to keep them in the bubble until we see how this plays out a little bit more. So I can see the Bucks landing in the bubble range.
They are, in fact, in the bubble. You know your team, Camille. But it was interesting. And again, this is all subjective, one person's rankings. It was interesting to see the teams they were around. Now, I, for one, and I think you would as well, I know we are biased, but we're also realists.
Yeah.
Would argue, I think you can make a case for the Bucks to be at the top of the bubble or the very bottom of that second tier. So somewhere in between that range. But they're in the bubble in this Athletic ranking. And what struck me is I believe this is the highest I've seen the Bucks ranked. And they've updated where they have been all throughout the offseason and the end of the season as well. The last ranking had the Bucks at 14. They are number 12 in this ranking. And that number 12 represents the 5th best ranking in the Eastern Conference, which, again, is somewhere we've both said I think the realistic expectations for this team are, I think they'll be about where they were last year. That's my baseline. And maybe everything breaks right. And some of the guys we talked about on the more recent shows do what we had suggested. And all of a sudden, this is a, wow, the Bucks have home court advantage or pushing for that type of mix. But this ranking has them coming in at 12 and 5th best in the Eastern Conference. Before we get into what went behind this, who would you guess is the Eastern Conference team in front of the Bucks?
In all the tiers or just within
just
this?
the closest to them?
I would think the Hawks.
Ooh.
I would think the Magic. I would think the Pistons. like I'm missing one more of those like younger kind of up and coming or made a move but those three teams for sure are the first to come to mind.
So the Bucks are 12. The Atlanta Hawks, they have 13.
Interesting. I would have actually thought they put the Hawks
I would have
above
assumed it was flipped.
after the
Yeah.
offseason. Yeah.
The team that they have Eastern Conference team directly in front of the Bucks, you also named, is the Detroit Pistons. And, I think the interesting thing about where the Bucks currently are, again, you can have your qualms with the wave and stretch of Damian Lillard and complain like, well, we're just running the same thing back, and you swapped out Brook Lopez for or Myles Turner in place of Brook Lopez there. I think it's more than that. I think it is very hard to dispute. At the very least, the Bucks are better than they were at the end of last season when they were playing some of their best basketball of the season. But the interesting thing to me is I think where the Bucks currently are, that division is better. I guess it's always a wait and see with the Chicago Bulls. Well, maybe. We know Billy Donovan was extended.
Right.
Seems like for every good move they have, there's another move that's like, oh.
You're like, I'm not sure why you did that one, but all right.
Yeah, so the Bulls are kind of treading water. The Pacers, I think we don't really know, frankly, what to expect. I mean, there's still the skeleton of a competitive team there that was in 2 straight conference finals and last summer's NBA finals. But obviously the absence of Myles Turner and the loss of Tyrese Halliburton for the season is going to be big. But the Cavs got better. I don't think that's questionable. And the Pistons, at the very least, stayed the same. And this was a division that took a step forward a season ago. So that's the number one starter of where are you going to make up the ground if you're the Bucks. And you're on that side that says, I don't believe in this team. I think that would probably be one of the first places you start is who's the number 2 option behind Giannis. And yeah, the conference is down, but there's a lot of teams that have at least made subtle strides to get better.
They have. And I think for Detroit, like you mentioned, they really remained the same for the most time. I mean, when they lost Beasley for what he has going on off the court right now.
Well, we don't know. Maybe he gets cleared and he comes back on a veteran minimum. But yes, you would assume.
Seems like Duncan Robinson walked right on into that spot on that team. But I think for Detroit,
Duncan Robinson became the new Aunt Viv, is what you're saying.
You could take it that way, I guess. But listen, I think for Detroit, it's Ivy coming back, where it's like that's their big free agent addition this upcoming season. Can he be a number 2 option? He seems to have the scoring punch to do so. So you have some faith in that. And then for Cleveland, like there's going to be questions around them losing Ty Jerome, who was a valuable guard for them off the bench. Garland's going to start the year injured. So like you have Lonzo Ball coming in, which is a move I love for Cleveland. I think Lonzo Ball is actually the perfect type of guard that they need next to Donovan Mitchell. I think you need a more defensive guard, but you're going to get that. So like, I expect Cleveland to still be good. The Knicks, I'm assuming, were in one of these, like
they were the number 2 team that they had.
Just period overall. Number 2?
Period number 2. Thunder number 1, Knicks number 2.
Interesting. So projecting the Knicks to be the best team in the East. I can see the pathway forward for that to happen. If Mike Brown come in here and unlock some things. So again, you're looking at the Bucks as is stated here as a 5 seed, which, as we've mentioned, I think the goal for the Bucks in this upcoming season, you want to try to finish top 6. I think that's the goal heading into the season. But you can see a pathway where they are top 3. But when you're looking at the division in itself, like Cleveland's going to be tough, but I don't think Cleveland's going to rattle off as many regular season wins as they did last year. You'd look at the other team, top of the East, Boston. I don't know where they're behind the Bucks in this ranking here. I'm assuming probably near Philly, who also has some questions there. So like and even Miami, to another team to kind of wonder what they're going to be this year. But divisionally, you're really looking at Cleveland. You're looking at Detroit primarily. And is not to write off the Pacers because they are going to be irritating. I think they're going to be
4 times a year. They're going to be at least 4 times a year. They're going to be extremely competitive.
Yeah, especially twice when Myles Turner makes his return too. So like, there's a lot of fluidity, I think, in the Eastern Conference and how things can shake out. So this is an interesting place. This is probably the highest I've heard the Bucks anywhere so far.
That's what struck me in the midsummer summary. is the obvious. Giannis is still there. Damian Lillard was shockingly waived and stretched, and that's going to be an issue for years to come, but he was already not going to contribute on the floor. And the Bucks were able to land Myles Turner from the team that ended their season each of the last 2 seasons. Turner replaces Lopez. Cole Anthony replaces Lillard's roster spot. I think that's a very important clarification. And then Gary Harris replaces Pat Connaughton, which probably is the case in terms of roster spot and playing time. That leaves Giannis and Bobby Portis as the only members of the 2021 championship team that remain on this roster, but they retained all of their remaining rotational pieces from a team that, again, we talk about this. Other guys, the Euro Step and local reporters will mention this. You don't hear it much anywhere else. From a team that went 16-8 without Damian Lillard on the floor last season and the 8-game win streak to close out the season. If nothing else, Giannis will be in MVP discussions and he can keep the Bucks out of the play-in tournament. So that is arguably the first time we have heard somebody outside of Wisconsin scoff at the notion of the Bucks being in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, first time. And I think as more people kind of really start to understand the direction that the Bucks are going to move in, I think you'll see more people kind of come along to the idea of it, as long as they don't become more tantalized by some of the newer options that the East has.
So that's the good, I suppose. There is always another side of the coin. We'll get to that breakdown on this Bucks summer coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. Time for some energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. We can be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay energized. That's where 5-Hour Energy comes in to play. I keep one in my bag for every Bucks game. I keep one in my golf bag on the course as well for those same reasons, to give you that energy shot wherever it is you're at any time of day. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. Of course, the grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the Bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Yeah, and again, I don't want to belabor this. We've spent quite a great deal of time talking about what the Bucks did, all the question that they were facing with the free agency, and basically keeping, 80-90% of the average fan's preferred players to be retained. And when you look at departures, Brook Lopez, Pat Connaughton, and Damian Lillard, I think with that is a certain style of play that is departing, and you're keeping all of those guys that, in a sense, went against that last year. And that not only 16-8 record that we just referenced, but also the 8-game win streak to close out the season. So that is, the positive. See the Bucks coming in at 12. Again, it's a power rankings. It's subjective, but 12 is kind of more in line with where I kind of view this team, as we've said, be, slightly better than average, and you still have Giannis, and you have the chance to improve upon that. So that's the good. The not so good, I suppose, is offseason grades for all the moves that were made. This came out within the last day from ESPN, and Kevin Pelton, who, look, does a tremendous job with this, but it's a grade that I don't think Bucks fans are going to be embracing here. And Camille, and pluses and minuses are valid in this. What grade would you guess was assigned to the Bucks off season so far?
Now, I think that the Bucks personally, my personal grade for the Bucks offseason would probably be like B minus, probably.
That's what I was going to say exactly.
Somewhere in that range. High end, the highest I would go was like a B, and that's you'd have to really kind of talk me into some things there. But B minus is probably where I would put them. So if I'm at a B minus, I'm going to guess that nationally ESPN, Kev over there, I'm gonna guess that he probably gave the Bucks like a D plus.
Close with a C plus.
Okay.
I was honestly expecting worse. I agree. I'm a pretty solid B minus. I would give the offseason, and that's really only because, again, I get the reasoning behind it, but it's really only because you're eating $20 million for the next 5 years.
That's the negative.
I just have a hard time locking in at a B with that. Now, if this pays off and the Bucks all of a sudden become a conference finals team, then we can revisit that. But that's, I think, why we're both at a B minus. It's a pretty big anchor that you're carrying, but everything else that you did, it carries some merit, and I can see why you did it, and I think it makes you better. But the point that Kevin Pelton gave was the stretching of Damian Lillard over the next 5 years. It does create cap room, and it allowed the Bucks to sign Myles Turner, who was the top player to change teams in free agency. I think we would all love full stop, but it's not. It isn't likely to result in Milwaukee contending. It at least gives the Bucks a chance this offseason with a power vacuum in the East due to injuries and Giannis still playing at a top 5 level, which 5, come on, it's at worst top 3. The Bucks did create work to bring back the rest of last season's core, albeit at the cost of handing out player options like party favors, which we commented on.
More special.
$5 got 2026, 27 player options, which could complicate next summer's roster building, which is also another important thing to point out. And we talked about it with who's the player most likely to jump up on a top 100 rankings a season from now, and which one of those would make it more challenging for the Bucks. That is the other difficult part is, player options means these guys blow up. They're looking for more money. Now the Bucks, again, have created this space, even with the $20 million in dead cap, to create that room to say, we can give you that. And we're in no danger of being a tax team, but it's just a conversation to be had down the road. So C plus, I didn't think is overly negative on this team. If we're both at a B minus, it's more the, and I always screw up the analogy between glass half full and glass half empty. We're on one side, Kevin Pelton's on the other, basically.
We're half full, Pelton's half empty in this situation. But yeah, C plus, that's not terrible. And again, the points that were brought up as to why he handed out that grade to the Bucks, they're fair. Those are all very fair points. And I know for the Bucks standpoint of things, like them saying that the cap is only projected to go up 7% next year made them probably pull the collar a little bit. Like the Bucks are going to be a team that is consistently hoping for that max 10% growth year to year for that salary cap, so that 22.5 just ends up being a smaller and smaller part of what their overall cap is going to be. So something to keep an eye on too for Bucks fans, just how the cap continues to rise over the next 4 years here. But yeah, I think that's fair. But I think the piece of it with him saying, like, I think he said championship tier wasn't possible for the Bucks or something like that. Yeah. That's the part I disagree in. And in large part because Giannis is still the best player in the Eastern Conference. And yes, we've talked a lot about how depth is important, the weak link theory, all of these different things that need to be considered when talking about what the ceiling of this Bucks team can be. But I still think Giannis is that good. And when you're putting him in a situation where he has the ball in his hand more to create for others and kind of rejuvenate his game in that way, in the sense of like just giving him a different frontier to conquer this upcoming season, which is important to continue to do after years and years in the league of like, hey, here's another new thing that we're throwing at you right now, a different style of play. Like you have some experience in it for sure. Not saying he doesn't, but like we're all in now with this being your full-time gig, not a secondary playmaker. Like, you are the primary one. So I have a lot of faith with the ball in Giannis's hand and what he can do with that. And I think the roster around him, while it might not be top 100 spectacular, I think the pieces make sense to be able to play in a style that can contribute in getting some wins.
I mean, yes, right now, are they championship contender? No, they're not in that class now. But when you have the best player in conference and arguably the best player in the league, you have a chance to get there, right? As long as injuries don't happen and the bottom doesn't fall out and players regress, the door is open for that possibility. I think that's the important part. And again, we'll see this year. I mean, we'll have the case study, but looking at the way that the roster was constructed in the past, where it's almost like what the Clippers are doing now. And it was interesting to see where the Clippers were falling in on some of the rankings, that they were in that tier above the Bucks, which I get. They have more star power. But I think all of us have kind of observed what's going on in Inglewood and said, starting to get some vibes from like 2022 up until June of this year. The notion of like, let's just keep this together. We're a good team. If we keep this together, we think we can compete. And we think one of these years, it's going to be our year and we're not going to have the injuries to deal with. Hasn't been the case so far for the Clippers. And for the Bucks, wasn't the case, save for that 1 year where everything kind of aligned, that you were good enough, you had health, and you had luck. That's the one thing when you look at those teams that are leaning into that, not necessarily the same comp, but even the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're certainly much younger. I mean, the Clippers are doubling and tripling down on age and experience, but a team like the Cavs too, when you look at, let's just keep this same group together and tweak it on the margins and see if that's the difference. Sooner or later, if it doesn't break through to at least the conference finals, then it's, the same conversation that was had with the Utah Jazz and other teams of probably time to blow this up. The Bucks have essentially made that pivot already. I mean, Chris Middleton's gone. Drew Holiday's gone. Damian Lillard, the guy that replaced Drew, is gone. Brook Lopez is gone. So I think the more important question is it better to just, kind of cling to the past and say, let's just keep this team good enough and hope that something breaks, or to radically change course, as we've seen? Like, would the Bucks be in a better spot if they had Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton right now, or just said, not even the injuries, just the style of play we've seen for the past few years, we can't compete at the level we need to play in that way, and we need to pivot?
Man, there's a lot to unpack. I think I need a fresh segment to unpack that one, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, that is an important question to get to. And we talked about this with someone else recently on one of our shows. There's an important conversation, I suppose, potentially to be had for one of the younger players on this team. We'll get to that coming up after this. Yeah, I mean, going back to that last question that I posed to you, Camille, like it's almost like the Bill Belichick school of like, and really, I mean, I say that, but the Bucks can't even really say they did that. The notion of like, would you rather get out on somebody a year too early or a year too late? I think you could make a very strong argument the Bucks are a year too late on a lot of those, that they, just as we said with the Clippers, just said, no, we think we like this group and we think this year they're going to be healthy. Sooner or later, you have to move on from that. Like, we've seen enough these last 2 years to know, talking about Achilles injuries and the pace that this game is played at now, like, it is no longer a half-court veteran team style play. You have to get out of that business. And the Bucks did that. Now, are they better in terms of star power? No. But are they better in terms of how the game is played? I think that's the important context that is not being applied to this.
Yeah, I would agree, because the thing with the Bucks in particular, it's like, I've seen a few tweets about this float around Bucks Twitter of just like, I don't think many people understand just how much it's going to help for the Bucks to be a young and fast team over what they have been the last few years. And when you look at what the Clippers are doing, like you mentioned, they're really doubling, tripling down on age. Like their youngest rotation players are 28. Like most of their guys that are gonna be on the rotation are my age, mid 30s, saying hi to 40 down the line. Chris Paul is 40. So like there's a lot of age there, but the Clippers their mindset is we just need y'all to be healthy for a year. Can we get one good year out of it? Because if we win a championship this old year, it's all worth it. We'll figure everything else out as it goes on with the next iteration looks like. But the Bucks could be seen as a quote unquote cautionary tale, because you can argue like the trade value for someone like a Chris Middleton was at a low point based on, the age, the injuries, and how they've affected his game and how he was looking with the Bucks post injury. And you go and trade him for a Kyle Kuzma, whose trade value was also depressed at the moment, because if we recall before, there were offers with 2 first-round picks for Kyle Kuzma to be traded elsewhere prior to him being traded to the Bucks.
He allegedly turned down a trip to the Mavs and could have been in the NBA Finals.
Right. So like value continues to, decreases, it goes up, it does all types of things with the play. And when you're dealing with older players, I think the volatility, like it's more volatile because it can change really quickly. And a tweak can derail you. It just changes the equation. And when you also have the players the Bucks had with their style of play of being a little bit slower on the pace, really taking time, probing things out, it goes in the face of a lot of what you're seeing with today's NBA of just the pace, the running. We're gonna push the young legs. And it makes me even think about Kevin Porter Jr. when he got here, and he mentioned like, it's a lot of older legs here. Like we're here to push the pace, and you need that in the game. So, and I think it's also unique with Giannis being 30, but also still being just such a threat in transition. Like you want to be in positions where you get out there and run. So yeah, I think for certain times, I understand why the calculus is we're going to go another year in on this old team. Like I get why the Clippers are doing it, for example, but for the Bucks, I think they've had enough sample size to be like, we can't keep doing this anyway. We finally hit that point of like, we have to do something different because this is no longer working.
Yeah, I mean, I get why the Clippers are doing it, opposed to the alternative, and the fact that that's what your roster is. Like the Bucks reached the point where it was just Brook Lopez and Damian Lillard, and Brook was a free agent, that it was much easier to pivot out of that. Now, if they didn't make the Chris Middleton, Kyle Kuzma trade, then I do wonder what this looks like this offseason and how things go, and even what Giannis's frame of mind is, if that's the case, where you are a second apron team and you have Damian Lillard that's not going to play, and Chris Middleton that may or may not have experienced more injury issues down the stretch. That's a much different conversation. But I just think, look, I get it that the roster is not a sexy roster, and Myles Turner doesn't make them a top tier contender. And maybe that will prove to be the case this season. I would still say, let's wait and see. But the larger conversation to be had in all of this is just, yeah, but don't you have to play the style that the league is playing? Don't you have to adapt to that? And the way the Bucks previously were, they just weren't going to be able to do that. And we saw them try for years to force the wheel and say, no, you may play that way, we're going to play this way, and we think we'll win out. And it just wasn't the case for not only the Bucks, for other veteran teams as well. The last thing to touch on here, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, if you will, and really take too much of it either, because here's the biggest caveat to apply to all of this. Summer League numbers, good or bad, it doesn't determine what you do at the NBA level. We've seen guys blow up in Summer League and not do anything at the NBA level. We've seen the opposite of guys have horrendous Summer Leagues and at least bounce back to be rotational level players. But we got into this a little bit with Frank on a show a week or so ago. And John Hollinger again gave a write-up on all the rookies that participated in Summer League and the guys that stood out outside of rookies for good and bad reasons. It wasn't every single team that had one of these guys. It was just 5, I believe, of each of those categories. And wouldn't you know it, the Bucks had somebody on that list. Tyler Smith, who, as Hollinger says, 33rd pick in the 2024 draft, was perhaps the most disappointing second-year player in Vegas failing to record a single assist through 5 games, shot 31% from the floor, and just a meager 7.0 PER in 5 games, looking like another year buried at the end of the Bucks bench. He watched his summer league teammate Chris Livingston probably pass him on the depth chart. And I think that's the bigger takeaway from this is it doesn't say that Tyler Smith can't contribute at the NBA level and can't bounce back from this. But the tough part is it felt like this was the summer where you really needed to see something because of how the Bucks fortified their front court. And now you just question, well, where are the opportunities? Where are the minutes going to come from when you got Giannis and Bobby Portis and Myles Turner and Jericho Sims? It feels like this is going to be an Oshkosh year for basically the bulk of the year for Tyler Smith.
It could be. He could be. And thinking about even the draft last year when Tyler Smith was chosen, and there was confusion around AJ Johnson being the first round pick, and then Tyler Smith is one of the first picks in the second round. And we made the joke of like, if they switched the draft order where Tyler Smith was in the first round, AJ Johnson was in the second round, people probably would have viewed the Bucks draft a little bit differently last year. But Tyler Smith, someone who, if I remember correctly too, in the G League this year, his numbers weren't as good with the Herd as they were in his season with the G League Ignite. So like there was already something to kind of keep an eye on there in regards to his play. And then Summer League comes, it's not a good showing. So now the question is, how do you bounce back from it? Because as we mentioned, like one of the skill sets with Tyler Smith that you're most enticed by is the shooting. And that was ice cold for him for the first 4 games in Summer League. It wasn't until that 5th game where you finally started to see some of them drop for him. But you want to continue to see him add to his game. Now, Tyler is still a very, very young player, so there's still a lot of room for whatever his career is going to be to manifest itself. But you would have hoped to see more at Summer League. And now with the way that the roster has been built out, there were questions for a second of like, could Tyler Smith possibly play the 3? And not sure of that answer at this point in his career, but like, I think it's going to be a big G League year for him where that's going to be where he has to really hone his skill set, because there's not going to be much opportunity, knock on wood, for him to play for the Bucks unless injury strikes, which is why I'm knocking on the wood here. But yeah, still young, but like the time is going to start ticking really loudly on wanting to see more from him as we continue to go on.
And I mean, look, it's also important to point out, as we talked about last week, you could pen in Brook Lopez every single game, save for that one season with the Bucks. He was an Iron Man. And I'm not saying he's made of glass. That has not been the case with Myles Turner. He did play 72 games last year, but there's going to be a difference there in games played. So there will be some of those opportunities, but in the case of Myles Turner, we would assume that means Jericho Sims and Bobby Portis and Giannis splitting the load. And again, we don't know that this is not the case or was any different from the past 2 seasons, I should say. But the big thing is, I think you at least have clarity if you're Tyler Smith that you know coming into this season, look, here are the things we need you to improve on. Consistency, I would assume, would be number 1, but these are the things to work on. You are going to work on these in Oshkosh, and if the opportunity presents itself and you do all the right things and show us what we need to see in Oshkosh, then if we get to that point, then we may have to lean on you if we have somebody go down or we just need to give somebody a blow and give them a rest. But here's the path for you. Here's the playbook. Here are the things to work on, and here's where you're going to do it. I think that's much is going to be clear to Tyler Smith this year.
And that's fair. And that's what a young player needs, like to be that clear on the direction of here's where we need to see the growth in your game. And this is what we need you to continue to work on. If we're having the same conversation next year, it's like with your employer, you have your performance review. There's some things you might need to work on. If we're having the same conversation next year, the conversation is going to feel a lot different. So again, he's a young player. This is going to be a big year for him. Even if it's not on the main roster, that development aspect that the Bucks have to continue to maintain with their young players is important. So a big year for Tyler Smith, even if it's not coming in the Bucks jersey. He just has to produce.
Leave your letter grades, and we know the offseason isn't done yet per se. We think it's largely done, but leave your letter grades on the Bucks offseason. Do you agree with that C+ grading that came in from ESPN? And where would you put the Bucks in terms of power rankings in the NBA going into the season? Eastern Conference outlook as well. Again, 12 right now and 5th in the Eastern Conference. Do you agree with those? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Also, drop your questions. We're going to look to start compiling those questions for our mailbag in the next couple of days here, and get some time on the calendar with Frank to record those. Who knows? Maybe even record those in person, Camille, because he has landed in Wisconsin, I've seen, and I believe we have something softly planned for the three of us. So leave your thoughts, leave your questions, and we'll get to the mailbag episode here in the coming days. That'll do it for today's show. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.